Midnight hour has approached, Nightlings. Welcome to episode 20 of season 2 of the Horror Headquarters. I hope you guys are all doing amazing. Today's episode is going to be about a pair of news that's been sweeping the news, both national and internationally. And it's about Frédéric Péchier, who is a French anesthesiologist, who, if you guys don't know what that is, doctor specializing in anesthesia and resuscitation. He is being accused of poisoning patients during surgery over a long period of time, starting back all the way in 2008, all the way up to 2017. And last night, a verdict was finally reached. So I'm going to be talking from the beginning all the way up until last night when the verdict was finally reached. So, who is Frédéric Péchier? An anesthesiologist, Frédéric Péchier was 53 years old and he worked primarily in two clinics in France, St. Vincent and the Franche-Comté Polyclinic, and he was accused of poisoning patients during surgery over a long period of time, as I stated, from 2008 to 2017. Now, between 2008 and 2017, a number of patients unexpectedly suffered cardiac arrest or serious complications during otherwise routine operations, and these incidents happened at the two clinics where he worked. Now, his colleagues said that he was always very calm, content, very relaxed, very set back on himself, but at the same time, he had an oversized ego and always looked as if he was a hero in certain operations, especially when it came to people suffering cardiac arrest during surgeries. Now, you might find yourself asking, why were the cases that started all the way back in 2008 not considered to be poisoning? Well, during that, at the time, they were logged as serious adverse events and considered tragic but possible, because there was no toxicology tests that were done on the IV fluids and no criminal suspicion existed at that time. But now, investigators later noticed that several patients experienced sudden cardiac arrest and during routine or low-risk surgeries, and with no clear surgical or anesthetic explanation. Patients were stable beforehand but not identified as high cardiac risk, and some patients eventually unfortunately died. Others were resuscitated by this person, Frédéric Péchier. Only years later was it finally flagged as medically atypical. And in 2010 to 2014, there was a repeating pattern. It was still invisible though. So what continued to happen was similar emergencies, sudden collapse, abnormal heart rates, and cardiac arrest during anesthesia. And again, in these situations, no mechanical issue was found, no drug error was documented, and surgery itself was not the cause. And why nothing stopped, you might be asking, is operating rooms are already high-risk environments. Rare events do happen, each case was treated as isolated. There was no known mechanism that was tying them together yet. Now in 2015, that all changed because there were subtle warning signs that were starting to arise. Some staff started to reportedly feel that there was unease about repeated emergencies and confusion over why similar incidents kept occurring. But again, no chemical evidence, no clear procedural error, and no single person was accused. And you'd think, like, hospitals are generally required to have heart proof to escalate to criminal authorities, and at this stage there still was none. Until January 2017, when everything changed. This is the key incident that started to give up big warning signs as to who could be doing all of this and why. On January 11th, 2017, a patient named Sandra Samad suffered a sudden cardiac arrest during back surgery, though she had no risk factors at all. And the testing of her IV fluids showed abnormally high potassium levels, which was a clear sign of tampering, and this is what triggered a formal criminal investigation. As a result, the IV infusion bag was preserved and chemical analysis was performed. Now, experts testified this could not have been accidental, it could not result from patient illness, and could not be a pharmacy or a manufacturing error, and this was the first objective proof that at least one poisoning had occurred. And after this finding, authorities found punctured or contaminated medication bags and began linking similar previous events. So those earlier unexplained serious adverse events from 2008, 2009, 2015, 2016 started to get reviewed, and investigators identified 30 suspicious poisonings, 12 of which were fatal. This investigation is why it's called the pivot point. This specific case with Sandra Samard is because this is what caused investigators to know what substance to look for, what clinical signature mattered, and then they started re-examining all these cases, doing all these open investigations. The sudden cardiac arrest during anesthesia, stable patients, no surgical explanation, similar physiological collapses occurring at the same clinics, and with overlapping staff presence. And then they ultimately identified these 30 cases, and they were treated as alleged poisons, not automatically proven ones though. So why these cases were so hard to detect is because patients were unconscious. Cardiac arrest can have many causes. Potassium poisoning leaves no obvious injury, no visible trauma, and without fluid testing, it looks completely natural. And in most fatal cases, no IV bag is tested. The evidence is discarded, and the cause is attributed to complication. Now, I'm going to say it now, this has continuously raised so many questions about the safety of being in a doctor's presence, about putting your life on the line with someone that you've never met before, is walking you through surgery while you're unconscious, and you never know what could happen. You never know what their intention is, their true intention. And this man, Frédéric Péchier, is making it all seem so clear. So yes, the legal proceedings started to build. Pachière was put under judicial supervision, so he wasn't put in prison, but he was banned from practicing medicine. And the formal case expanded over several years as prosecutors and investigators compiled evidence from many medical records and incidents. And in September 2025, the trial finally began on September 8th of 2025 of this year. And more of 150 civil parties, the victims, the families, were involved, and the trial was expected to continue until December 2025. Now, this is the allegation. Prosecutors allege that Péchier deliberately poisoned patients' IV fluids or other medication bags during surgery, and substances suspected included high doses of potassium and possibly anesthetic drugs like lidocaine, both capable of triggering cardiac arrest and other life-threatening complications. Now, these incidents often occurred when Péchier was present and able to respond to resuscitate the patient. And here's the motive, if you guys haven't caught on yet already. The prosecutors claim that he may have done this to show off his resuscitation skills, appearing as the one who could save patients from emergencies he caused, and also to discredit colleagues with whom he was in conflict professionally. This alleged behavior would be aimed at enhancing his reputation or undermining others. Investigators reviewed over 70 serious adverse events, so medical jargon for unexpected complications, and narrowed dozens down to 30 cases linked to poisoning. The key breakthrough was that laboratory finding of abnormally high potassium in IV fluids in that 2017 incident. And those earlier events from 2008 and 2009 were connected due to similarities and Péchier's presence during them. Now, as you might have expected, Pachière denied anything being involved in being a poisoner and maintains his innocence, and his lawyers argued that there is no direct evidence proving he intentionally caused these events, and because he has stated he respected the Hippocratic Oath and that accusations are built on assumptions rather than proof. Now, this was true. There was no DNA that linked him directly to causing all of this, which is why the defense thought they had a pretty good case, saying there's no DNA evidence, there's no video footage of anything going on. The patients were under. So this is the perfect reason why situations like this are constantly looked over. Now, this is where I think Frédéric Péchier messed up. During his trial and throughout his testimony in defense, he did not categorically deny that some IV bags may have been poisoned, and he accepted the idea that the medical findings, like the abnormal potassium, pointed to real contamination, and he essentially said if poisoning occurred, then someone did it, but it was not me. And this is a crucial shift from nothing happened to something happened, just not by me. Now, this very acknowledgement had two effects. It removed one line of defense, which was by accepting that poisonings were real, the defense could no longer argue that this is all a coincidence, and it shifted the case to a single question: who had the access, the opportunity, and presence to do it? And that narrowed the focus, unintentionally. And it aligns with the prosecution's anchor evidence. Once that 2017 IV bag was chemically proven to be contaminated, denying all poisoning became hard to sustain, so the defense strategy became accept the fake contamination, reject the identity of the contaminator, and legally coherent but risky. Christopher Dunch. Does that name ring a bell? Because when I read this headline, this insane headline, I immediately was reminded of Dr. Death, who is Christopher Dunch, a former American neurosurgeon who had been nicknamed Dr. Death for 33 incidents of gross neurosurgical malpractice while working at hospitals in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which named 31 patients and caused 2 deaths. And now many media outlets are labeling this as the Dr. Death of France. Now, the reason this kind of makes sense is because there was also a pattern with this exact person where it took them a while to finally understand and accept that there was a pattern of patient injury that was required to justify the suspending of his license. But I think what pissed me off about the case here in America was that there were so many different scenarios that happened where people are questioning his ability, like Christopher's ability to be a neurosurgeon, and the board consistently stated, oh, we could never imagine a neurosurgeon doing this or that. We can't. Well, yeah, we can imagine it. You don't know how crazy and psychotic people can be. And it just shows the ignorance behind these people, especially in today's society. Like the one in France makes so much more sense because there wasn't as much evidence, but then they started connecting the pieces more and more, and they stopped in 2017. That's not to say that there couldn't have been more due diligence. Obviously, in 2008, they didn't really preserve IV fluids because they wouldn't even imagine that something like that could happen. But in this new era that we're in, anything is possible. Anything really is possible, and you have to take extreme precaution. There's a reason why people are so hesitant to go to hospitals, to go to doctors, to put their lives in the hands of other people because of situations like this. And that's not to say that all doctors are like this, so don't even twist my words. That's just to show you that there should always be a sense of urgency, especially when it comes to the medical field, because it's your life at risk. Now, let's get to the current legal situation. Prosecutors were seeking a life sentence with a minimum period of 22 years and a permanent ban on medical practice, and the verdict was expected by mid-December 2025, and we finally received that verdict. Here is the verdict. Number 1. Guilty on all major charges. The court found that Frédéric Péchier was guilty on 30 counts of intentional poisoning that occurred between 2008 and 2017, which were 30 poisonings that were judged to have been carried out deliberately, 12 of those resulting in death, and the remaining 18 in serious but non-fatal complications. The victims included a wide age range, from very young children from the age of 4 years old to elderly adults. And the court accepted the prosecution's case that Pachière contaminated patients' IV bags and medication with substances intended to cause cardiac arrest or hemorrhage, such as potassium, local anesthetics, adrenaline, and anticoagulants. These substances can disrupt heart rhythm or blood clotting when introducing improperly into an IV. The prosecutor went on to argue that Pachière acted not for the financial gain, but to harm colleagues professionally or psychologically, gain a sense of power or control, and possibly even try to make himself look superior by intervening in emergencies he had created. And officials described this alleged action as deliberately exploiting trust in a medical setting, which goes back to my other point. You don't realize how much trust you put in these people's hands. Here is the sentence. The court handed down one of France's heaviest sentences for a healthcare professional: life imprisonment, a minimum term before parole eligibility of 22 years, and a permanent ban on practicing medicine. Now, this is what reflected the maximum penalties available in French criminal law for such crimes, and this is exactly what the prosecutors wanted. The legal context is the verdict was reached after a 15-week trial with extensive medical, technical, and witness testimony. Again, there was 150 people. And the court considered each of the 30 cases individually as part of one overarching pattern. That's what the jury was meant to look at. They were meant to look at everything from the beginning to start, not just one simple case. And the civil parties expressed relief at the verdict, viewing it as closure after years of uncertainty. I can't imagine living for that long waiting for justice to be served. And the emotional testimonies during the trial highlighted the long-term impacts on survivors and the bereaved relatives. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. An appeal is planned because immediately after the verdict, Péchier's defense announced plans to appeal, meaning the case may be heard again in a higher court, which will review the evidence and the legal findings once again, which could prolong this, unfortunately. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, what did Frédéric Péchier say in response to this exact verdict? He denied it. Throughout the trial and at its conclusion, Pachière maintained his innocence, repeating variations of "I am not a poisoner." He insisted he had never intentionally harmed patients and repeatedly rejected the accusation that he committed poisoning. And he also tried to make an attempt to distance himself from this exact poisoning. As I said it before, he acknowledged that there was poisoning events in the clinics, but he stressed he was not responsible for them. And he reflects this defense strategy of accepting the existence of the events but denying personal. Now, there's something I think that's going to go down in history for sure with this case is the last thing he said at the end of the trial was, "I am not a poisoner." He told that to the court, and he underscored that he had upheld his professional oath. And in media reports, it's noted that he did not react visibly when the verdict was read. His family members were overwhelmed in the court, and his defense had described the trial as insufficiently conclusive and announced an appeal. So, this case has been described by French officials as unprecedented in French legal and medical history due to its scale and nature, and some former colleagues expressed regret and remorse at trial for not noticing earlier signs, and the case has since raised major questions about patient safety, trust in medical professionals, and how unusual patterns of emergencies are recognized and investigated. Now begs the question, do you guys think he's guilty? Do you think he's not guilty? Do you think he caused all of these poisonings? Do you think he's responsible in some way or fully possible that he did everything? What is your verdict on this specific case with all the evidence laid out to you guys? Do you have any questions? Is there anything you're curious about, you're questioning? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts, so please, if you're listening on Spotify, drop a comment below. Keep in mind, we do have an Instagram at the Horror Headquarters. You're more than welcome to comment this on our most recent post. I'd love to get a discussion going. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on this case, on the insanity that has occurred, and the fact that IV bags were being contaminated with potassium and adrenaline, all these things that can affect the simplest of surgeries, like a back surgery, and then suddenly she's going into cardiac arrest. And he's there to save the day. Coincidence? I don't know. What do you guys think? You gotta let me know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and just reading this on the news, it really did make me want to come talk about this, because there's been so many videos I've created, like on psychiatric hospitals, on medical professionals that have gone so far as to purposely label people as having psychological issues, giving them these kind of treatments, and then stating they've done nothing wrong and that they're doing it for their own sake, their own sanity. Just makes you think about all the other cases that were dismissed, that weren't investigated, so many fatalities that happened, that you might be asking yourself, was it coincidence? Was it caused by something? This world is crazy. There's so much uncertainty, especially in the medical field. As someone that studied in the medical field, that took biology, that took health, that took society, that learned about all the things that we're supposed to be given patients, about lab technicians, all this kind of stuff, you never know what someone's true intentions are. And I think that's what definitely intrigues me to learn about this specific degree, and that's why I got a bachelor's in it. It's so intriguing, it's so interesting, and yeah, I got it to help people, but at the same time, you just realize how effed up the medical industry, especially here in the US, is, and how unfortunate it's become, and it continues to become. So let me know your guys' thoughts. Make sure you guys hit that follow button, share this with someone that you know would love this episode, that would love true crime, like this kind of stuff with doctors, where you're supposed to be putting your heart and your trust into, and then you never know what could be happening behind closed doors while you're unconscious, while you're going under with anesthesia. You never know what could happen. So please let me know your thoughts. Make sure you guys hit that follow button, subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Horror Headquarters. If you're on Spotify, again, please comment below your thoughts on this episode. There will be a poll. So if you guys don't have Spotify, it's free. Please download Spotify and vote on the poll. And comment below. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Share this with someone. Get a discussion going. This is breaking news. This is very fresh out of the door, and we will see if an appeal is created now. And if an appeal is approved and it's taken to our higher court, I will be sure to let you guys know. So keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. I apologize for the long delay in an episode. I know we didn't get one out in November, guys. It's been an insane year. Can't really get into it, but it's just been a really tough year. Very intense year. I'm trying to do my best. I'm happy I got to sit down and record this episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I will try to get one out as soon as possible again. But until next time, tread very lightly and pray for forgiveness. Midnight hour is approaching.